The Leopard 2 tanks made by Krauss Maffei Wegmann have been an international bestseller for decades. Robust and versatile, they have plenty of firepower. They were originally designed as a battle tank for use on open territory, but modern versions are also suitable for urban situations, as demonstrated by the German armed forces.
Canadian and Danish units have discovered the mere presence of the Leopard 2 is enough to paralyze and deter any opponent. Computerized precision weapons can also be used against particularly aggressive demonstrators.
German armaments like the Leopard 2 are particularly popular in the Middle East. At international trade fairs, Saudi Arabia and Qatar show keen interest. But in the end, it's the German government that has to approve a sale. And back in Berlin, the opposition is urging the government to exercise more caution.
Every weapon that I export could be used to kill people, to fuel wars, but also for domestic purposes. Saudi Arabia has seen protests that have been violently suppressed. I don't want to see German tanks being used in a year's time to shoot at demonstrators in Riyadh's main square.
But Chancellor Merkel takes a different view. Be it the Middle East, Asia, or Africa, she stated repeatedly that weapons exports are part of her foreign policy. She wants to strengthen regional powers like Saudi Arabia to enable them to provide stability in their region.
We have to equip those nations that are ready to engage. And I emphasize that includes selling weapons, although of course only in accordance with the recognized rules and principles.
Those principles refer to a document drawn up by the government of former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder in 2000, which laid out political guidelines for exporting weapons of war. They still apply today. But Saudi Arabia hardly fits the bill. It's ruled by an authoritarian monarchy. Human rights count for little. The regime represses opposition and in March 2011 even helped put down demonstrations in neighboring Bahrain. The German guidelines, on the other hand, require special consideration for human rights, but Saudi Arabia is not dependent on Germany.
When Germany hasn't provided the desired Leopard tanks, and I believe the Saudis have asked repeatedly since 1980, they've just turned to the US instead, who sold them their equivalent Abrams tanks. So I think we need to get together with our allies and closest partners in NATO and the EU to hammer out joint principles on what can and can't be exported.
The West is looking to Saudi Arabia and Qatar to hold off a common enemy. Iran has threatened to block the Strait of Hormuz, the #1 route for oil and gas exports from the Middle East. The West hopes a well-armed Saudi Arabia could prevent that scenario. But it's not just the Saudis. Patrol boats have been sent to Angola, for example, a country still recovering from decades of civil war.
The government needs to not just deliver weapons randomly, but embed the whole thing in a security concept. But you can't say you want to build up a state and then suddenly stop when it comes to the army.
The government decides on weapons exports through the Federal Security Council, which meets behind closed doors. A report on those exports is only provided 1 year later. And even then, it doesn't include information on individual deals. The opposition wants more transparency.
All the proposals and decisions made by the Federal Security Council should be discussed by Parliament in one sitting at a set point in the year.
70% of the weapons produced in Germany are now destined for export. Domestic demand is no longer enough. Back in 1990, the Bundeswehr had over 2,000 Leopard tanks. Today, that number has shrunk to just 225. Germany's Western allies are also cutting their military budgets. So international exports are a lifeline.
Either we have to downsize the industry or continue to finance it. And if we don't want to use taxpayers' money for that, then we have to try and solve the problem through exports.
German weapons are in demand all over the world, be it Leopard 2 tanks, Heckler & Koch firearms, or Dolphin submarines. Weapons exports are big business and an opportunity for the government to pursue its political agenda. One thing is clear: Germany has long ceased to be so reticent when it comes to exporting weapons.